The chamber was enormous. Yunyo had never seen anything like it in his life. The ceiling stretched so high that he could barely see where it ended. Lights floated in the air without any support, casting a soft glow across the vast room. Around him sat creatures from worlds he had only seen in pictures and videos. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like they were made of living metal or energy itself. Junho stood at the center of it all. He wore his best suit, the one Earth had specially made for this moment. His hands trembled slightly, but he kept them clasped behind his back so no one would notice. Behind him stood 3 other humans from Earth's diplomatic team. They all looked nervous, but they tried to hide it. This was the Galactic Council, the most powerful organization in the known universe. Thousands of worlds belonged to it. They made decisions that affected trillions of living beings. And today Earth had come to ask for their help. Junho cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice was steady, even though his heart was racing. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, I come before you today on behalf of planet Earth and all of humanity. We face a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered. Our scientists have detected a massive force approaching our sector of space. We call it the Void Swarm. He paused and looked around the chamber. Some of the alien delegates were watching him. Others seemed bored. A few were not even paying attention at all. Junho continued. The Void Swarm is a collection of biomechanical ships. They consume everything in their path. Planets, stations, entire solar systems. They have already destroyed 3 systems near our borders. Millions of beings have died. We have tried to fight them, but our weapons barely slow them down. We need your help. We need your technology, your weapons, your armies. Please, help us stop this threat before it destroys Earth. Silence filled the chamber for a moment. Then someone laughed. It was a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the walls. Soon others joined in. The laughter spread through the council like a wave. Junho felt his face grow hot. He had expected many reactions, but not this. Not laughter. A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles together. The humans want our help? How amusing. Tell me, Ambassador Junho, what can Earth possibly offer in return? Yunyo swallowed hard. We can offer our resources, our labor, our loyalty to the Council. We may be new to the galactic community, but we are willing to work hard and prove ourselves. More laughter erupted. This time it was louder. A being made of what looked like liquid crystal spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. Resources, labor. What could a primitive world like yours possibly have that we need? Your planet still uses fossil fuels for energy. You fight wars among yourselves. You have not even colonized your own moon properly. Another delegate spoke up. This one had 4 arms and purple skin. I have seen the reports on human military capabilities. You still use chemical propulsion for your rockets. Your most powerful weapons are nuclear bombs. How quaint. How utterly useless against something like the Void Swarm. Junho felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry would not help Earth. He needed to stay calm and keep trying. Please, he said. I understand we are not as advanced as your civilizations, but we are talking about the extinction of our entire species. 4 billion humans will die if the Void Swarm reaches Earth. Surely the Council was created to prevent such tragedies. The leader of the Council finally spoke. His name was Voth, and he belonged to a species called the Krell. They were one of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. Voth looked almost human, except his skin was pale blue and his eyes were completely black. Voth's voice was cold and formal. Ambassador Junho, the Galactic Council exists to maintain order and peace among its member worlds. Earth is not a member. You applied for membership 3 years ago, and your application is still under review. Even if we wanted to help you, we cannot justify the expense. The Void Swarm is indeed dangerous, but it is far from Council space. Our resources are limited. We must protect our own worlds first. Junho stepped forward. But the Void Swarm will not stop at Earth. Our scientists have tracked its path. After it destroys our world, it will continue into Council territory. It will reach the outer colonies in less than 2 years. If you help us stop it now, you will be protecting your own worlds as well. Voth waved a hand dismissively. Our military analysts have reviewed the data you provided. They do not share your concerns. The Void Swarm may be dangerous to primitive worlds, but we have defenses that can handle such threats. If it does reach Council space, we will deal with it then. A delegate that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. Perhaps the humans simply lack the courage to face their doom. It is common among lesser species to panic when confronted with superior force. Junho clenched his fists. We are not cowards. We have fought and survived countless threats throughout our history. We are not asking you to fight our battle for us. We are asking for weapons, for technology, for knowledge that could help us defend ourselves. Voth stood up from his seat. The chamber fell silent. The Council has made its decision. We will not provide military aid to Earth. We will not share our technology with a non-member world. And we will not waste our resources on what is essentially a lost cause. He looked directly at Junho. Ambassador, I will be frank with you. Your species is barely sentient by galactic standards. You have been in space for less than a century. You have no significant technology, no powerful allies, no strategic value. Why should we risk our ships and our soldiers for a world that offers us nothing in return? Unyo felt something break inside him. Not his spirit, but his hope that these beings would see reason. He realized then that the Council did not care about justice or mercy. They only cared about power and profit. Because it is the right thing to do, Junho said quietly. Because every life has value. Because today it is Earth that needs help, but tomorrow it could be one of your worlds. Because we are all living beings trying to survive in a dangerous universe. Voth sat back down. How poetic. How utterly meaningless. This session is concluded. Ambassador Junho, you and your delegation will leave Council space within 24 hours. Do not return unless Earth has something of actual value to offer. The lights in the chamber shifted, signaling that the meeting was over. Delegates began to leave, talking among themselves. Some were still laughing at the silly humans who thought they deserved to be saved. Junho and his team walked out of the chamber in silence. Their ship was waiting in the docking bay. As they boarded, Junho looked back at the massive station that housed the Galactic Council. It looked beautiful from the outside, all gleaming metal and glowing lights, but inside it was rotten. On the journey back to Earth, Junho sat alone in his quarters. He thought about what he would tell his leaders. He thought about the 4 billion people who were counting on him. He thought about the children who would never grow up, the dreams that would never be realized, the future that was being stolen from humanity. But most of all, he thought about Voth's words. What can Earth possibly offer? Maybe Earth could not offer anything the Council wanted, but maybe, just maybe, Earth could offer something the Council did not expect. Unyo did not know what that would be yet. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the dark. If the galaxy would not save them, then they would save themselves, or die trying. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours of Junho's return, every person on the planet knew the truth. The Galactic Council had refused to help. Humanity was alone. In the beginning, there was panic. People rushed to stores to buy food and supplies. Some tried to flee to remote areas, hoping to hide from the coming destruction. Governments struggled to maintain order as fear gripped the population. But then something remarkable happened. Something that surprised even humanity itself. People stopped running. They stopped panicking. And they started to fight back. It began in small ways. A factory worker in Seoul stayed late to help build components for defense satellites. A farmer in Brazil donated his entire harvest to feed the workers constructing weapons. A teacher in Cairo spent her evenings teaching children how to use emergency equipment, just in case. Within a week, the panic had transformed into determination. Within a month, it had become fury. General Mina stood in the war room deep beneath the United Earth Defense Headquarters. She had been a military commander for 20 years, serving in 3 different countries before Earth's nations finally united. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. People often underestimated her because of her size. They never made that mistake twice. Around her, screen showed data streaming in from every corner of the planet. Production numbers, troop movements, scientific reports, resource allocations. It was overwhelming. But Mina had learned long ago how to process vast amounts of information quickly. "Give me the status report," she said to her aide. A young man named Kiwan pulled up a holographic display. "All nations have committed their full resources to the defense effort. We have converted 17% of global manufacturing to military production. Food production has been optimized to feed the maximum number of people with minimum resources. All space-capable nations have shared their technology freely." Mina nodded. "What about the civilian population?" "Morale is high, surprisingly. We expected more resistance, more fear, but people seem to have accepted the situation. Volunteer rates are at 200% of our needs. We have had to turn people away." Mina allowed herself a small smile. Humans are strange creatures, Kiwan. We fight among ourselves constantly, but when an outside threat appears, when someone tells us we cannot survive, we become united. The council made a mistake when they dismissed us. She walked to the large central screen that displayed a countdown timer. 6 months, 14 days, 9 hours. That was how long they had until the void swarm reached Earth. "Connect me to the science division," Mina ordered. A moment later, 2 faces appeared on the screen. One belonged to Hyun, a physicist who had won 3 international awards before he turned 30. The other was Somin, a bioengineer who had pioneered new techniques in genetic modification. Together, they led Earth's scientific response to the crisis. Hyun spoke first. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but his voice was energetic. "General, we have had a breakthrough. We have been studying the data from the destroyed colonies, analyzing what little footage we have of the void swarm in action." "And?" Mina prompted. Somin leaned forward. "The swarm is biological in nature, but enhanced with mechanical components. Think of it as a hybrid organism. The individual ships are not intelligent, but they operate as a collective hive mind. They communicate through some kind of electromagnetic field," Hyun added, "which means they are vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses. A strong enough EMP could disrupt their communications, break their coordination." Mina considered this. "How strong are we talking about?" "Stronger than anything we have ever built before," Hyun admitted. "But we think it is possible. We would need to modify our nuclear weapons, increase their electromagnetic output while reducing their explosive yield. Instead of destroying the swarm ships, we would be confusing them, making them attack each other." "How long to develop such weapons?" Somin and Hyun exchanged glances. 3 months if we have unlimited resources and personnel." "You have both," Mina said immediately. "Whatever you need, you get it. Send me a list within the hour." After the scientists signed off, Mina turned to review the military situation. The numbers were not encouraging. Earth had approximately 50,000 spacecraft capable of combat. Most were small patrol ships or cargo vessels that had been retrofitted with weapons. Against the Void Swarm's estimated 10 million bioships, they were hopelessly outnumbered. But numbers were not everything. Humanity had other advantages. Mina pulled up the strategic plan that her staff had been developing. It was ambitious, perhaps insane, but it might work. The plan called for Earth to turn the entire solar system into a trap. They would not meet the swarm in open space where they would be overwhelmed. Instead, they would use the terrain to their advantage. Automated defense platforms were being built and positioned throughout the solar system. These platforms would be equipped with kinetic weapons, missiles, and the new EMP bombs that Hyun and Somin were developing. They would be controlled by artificial intelligence systems that could react faster than any human pilot. Behind these platforms, Earth's fleet would be divided into rapid response groups. These groups would strike at weak points in the swarm, then retreat before they could be overwhelmed. Hit-and-run tactics over and over, bleeding the enemy slowly. And if all else failed, Earth itself would become a fortress. Every major city was being equipped with anti-aircraft defenses. Underground bunkers were being expanded to shelter the population. Weapons were being distributed to civilian volunteers. Mina knew that conventional warfare would not be enough. The Council had been right about one thing. Earth's technology was primitive compared to the rest of the galaxy. But humans had something that technology could not replicate: creativity, desperation, the willingness to try things that no sane person would attempt. Over the next few months, Earth transformed. Factories that had once built cars now built missile launchers. Scientists who had studied medicine now studied ways to kill alien organisms. Artists created propaganda posters that covered every city, reminding people what they were fighting for. One poster showed a child looking up at the stars. The caption read, "They said we are not worth saving. Let us prove them wrong." Another showed a clenched fist against a backdrop of space. The caption, "Earth stands alone. Earth stands strong." In orbit, construction crews worked around the clock building the defense network. They worked in shifts, sleeping in cramped quarters on the stations, eating meals that came from packets. It was hard, dangerous work. 17 workers died in construction accidents. Each time the others mourned briefly, then went back to work. There was no time to waste. Kiwan approached Mina one evening as she reviewed progress reports. "General, I have the latest volunteer numbers. We now have enough trained personnel to crew every ship 3 times over, and we have had to establish a waiting list for combat positions. Mina shook her head in wonder. People volunteering to die. What have we become? Survivors, Kiwan said simply. That is what humans do best. We survive. Mina thought about Junho and his failed mission to the council. She had spoken with him once since his return. He had been devastated by the council's response, blaming himself for not being persuasive enough. She had told him the truth. The council was never going to help us, no matter what you said. They see us as beneath them. But that is their mistake, not yours. They think being advanced means being superior. They have forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight for survival. We will remind them. In the weapons labs, Hyun and Somin were making progress faster than anyone had expected. The EMP bombs were working. The tests showed they could disrupt the swarm's communications over a radius of several thousand kilometers. Combined with kinetic weapons and conventional explosives, they might have a chance. But it would be close. Very close. Salman had taken to sleeping in the lab. Hyun brought her meals and made sure she ate. One night he found her staring at a model of the void swarm on her computer screen. We are going to die, are we not? She asked quietly. Hyun sat down next to her. Probably. The odds are not in our favor. Then why are we working so hard? Why not spend our last days with our families? Hyun was quiet for a moment. Because maybe, just maybe, we will win. And if we do not, then at least we will have tried. At least we will go down fighting. That has to mean something. Somin nodded slowly. I suppose it does. Across the planet, similar conversations were happening. Parents explained to their children why they had to work long hours. Soldiers wrote letters to loved ones just in case they did not come back. Old people who had lived through wars before offered advice and comfort to the young. And through it all, the countdown timer kept ticking. 6 months became 5. 5 became 4. The void swarm was coming and nothing could stop it. But Earth was ready. Or as ready as it could be. General Mina stood one last time in the war room, looking at the complete defense network. Thousands of platforms, hundreds of ships, millions of soldiers and volunteers. It was the greatest military force Earth had ever assembled. It would have to be enough. Send the message to all units, she ordered. Battle stations. The swarm will be here soon. The first warning came from the outer detection grid. A wave of energy signatures appeared at the edge of the solar system, so numerous that the sensors could barely process them all. The void swarm had arrived. Captain Tae-hyun stood on the bridge of the battleship Seoul, humanity's flagship. It was not the largest ship in the fleet, but it was the most advanced. Every piece of technology Earth had developed over the past 6 months had been incorporated into its design. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, their faces calm despite the fear they all felt. Tae-hyun was a career naval officer. He had commanded ships for 15 years, but those had been ocean vessels on Earth. He had trained for space combat in the months leading up to this moment, learning as fast as he could. Now he was responsible for coordinating the entire human fleet in the most important battle in history. No pressure. Distance to swarm vanguard? He asked his sensor officer, a woman named Yoonji. 4 million kilometers in closing. Speed is holding steady at 0.2 light speed. Yoonji's voice was steady, professional. Estimated time to engagement range, 47 minutes. Tae-hyun nodded. Everything was going according to the plan. The swarm was moving exactly as the models had predicted. They were heading straight for Earth, ignoring the outer planets. They had one goal: consume the inner solar system and everything in it. Humanity's first line of defense waited between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars. 2,000 automated defense platforms floated in the darkness, their weapons armed and ready. Behind them, the human fleet was divided into 6 battle groups, each positioned to respond to threats from different angles. Tae-hyun opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain Tae-hyun to all vessels. The enemy has arrived. You all know the plan. You all know what we are fighting for. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every being who has ever been told they are not worth saving. Hold your positions until my command. Good luck to all of you. Responses came back from hundreds of ships. Roger that, Seoul. Ready when you are, Captain. Let them come. On Earth, General Mina watched the same displays from her command center. The entire planet held its breath. Schools had been dismissed. Businesses were closed. Billions of people watched their screens, waiting to see if humanity would survive the day. Mina had positioned herself and her reserves carefully. If the fleet failed to stop the swarm, Earth had one last line of defense. Every weapon, every soldier, every person who could hold a gun. It would not be enough, but they would try anyway. The countdown continued. 40 minutes, 30, 20. At 10 minutes, the swarm entered visual range. Even knowing what to expect, Taehyun felt his stomach drop when he saw them. They filled the space before him like a living sea. Each ship was roughly the size of a commercial aircraft, black and purple in color. They pulsed with a sickly bioluminescence that made them look like deep-sea creatures. Tentacles and spines protruded from their hulls. They moved in perfect unison, a single organism with millions of parts. "Count?" Taehyun asked, though he dreaded the answer. Yoonji's voice was tight. 13 million individual contacts. Repeat, 13 million. 13 million. The estimates had been low. Very low. Taehyun forced himself to stay calm. Transmit the data to all units. Adjust firing solutions accordingly. All platforms prepare to engage on my mark. The swarm kept coming. 5 million kilometers. 4 million. 3. At 2 million kilometers, Taehyun gave the order. All platforms fire at will. Space lit up with weapons fire. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds. Missiles traced arcing paths through the void, and energy beams lanced out toward the approaching mass. The automated platforms fired with inhuman precision, each shot calculated to inflict maximum damage. The front ranks of the swarm disintegrated. Hundreds, then thousands of bioships exploded or were torn apart by the barrage. It should have been encouraging, but Taehyun saw the truth immediately. For every ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The swarm absorbed the casualties without slowing down. They did not scatter or retreat. They just kept coming. Platforms are firing continuously, Yoonji reported. Ammunition reserves at 80%, 75, dropping fast. Taehyun gritted his teeth. The platforms had been designed for sustained combat, but not against an enemy this numerous. They would run out of ammunition long before they made a significant dent in the swarm. Deploy the EMP weapons. Pattern Delta. Across the defense line, special platforms activated. These were Hyun and Soman's creations, modified nuclear weapons designed to disrupt the swarm's collective intelligence. They detonated in coordinated bursts, creating waves of electromagnetic energy that washed over the approaching bioships. For a moment, it worked. The swarm's perfect formation wavered. Individual ships began moving erratically, some even firing on their neighbors. In that brief window of confusion, humanity's conventional weapons took a heavier toll, but then the swarm adapted. The ships in the rear adjusted their communications frequencies. The disorganized front ranks were simply abandoned, allowed to die while the rest of the swarm continued forward with renewed coordination. "They are learning," Yoonji said, unable to hide the shock in her voice. "The EMP weapons are losing effectiveness." Taehyun had expected this, but not so quickly. All battle groups advanced to secondary positions. "Begin hit-and-run attacks. Do not let them surround you," the human fleet surged forward. They were vastly outnumbered, but they had speed and maneuverability. The bioships were fast in a straight line, but they were slow to turn. Human pilots could exploit that weakness. Battle Group Gamma struck first, led by Commander Jisoo and the destroyer Busan. Her ships dove into the swarm's flank, firing at point-blank range before pulling away. The tactic worked. Hundreds of bioships exploded before they could react. But the swarm was learning here too. As Battle Group Gamma retreated, tentacles shot out from nearby bioships. They were not just weapons, Taehyun realized. They were tools for grabbing and holding prey. 3 human ships were caught. The tentacles wrapped around their hulls, crushing metal and piercing reactors. The ships exploded, taking dozens of bioships with them, but the loss hurt. Every human ship was precious. The swarm could afford casualties. Humanity could not. Gamma Group, pull back further before engaging, Taehyun ordered. Maintain distance of at least 5 kilometers. The battle continued for hours. Human ships darted in and out, firing and retreating. Defense platforms expended their ammunition and then detonated themselves as the swarm passed, taking more enemy ships with them. It was a fighting retreat exactly as planned, but the swarm kept coming. For every 100 ships destroyed, the gap barely seemed to narrow. They flowed around obstacles like water. always pressing forward, always advancing toward Earth. Taehyun watched the tactical display with growing dread. At this rate, the outer defenses would be completely overrun within 12 hours. Then the swarm would reach Mars orbit, where the second line of defense waited. And if that fell, Earth itself would be next. On Earth, people watched the battle unfold in real time. Parents held their children close. Friends gathered in homes and shelters. Strangers stood together in the streets, unable to look away from the screens showing the desperate fight happening millions of kilometers away. In the science labs, Yoon and So-min watched helplessly. Their weapons were working, but not well enough. The swarm was too numerous, too adaptable. "We need to change the plan," So-min said suddenly. "The EMP weapons are not enough. We need something more." Hyun looked at her. "What are you thinking?" "The swarm operates as a collective intelligence, right? What if we do not just disrupt it? What if we override it?" "Override it? How?" "We do not even understand how their communications work." So-min pulled up her research data. "We do not need to understand it completely. We just need to inject false signals, make them think their own ships are enemies, turn the swarm against itself." Hyun stared at the data. It was insane. It was brilliant. And it might be impossible to implement in the middle of a battle. "How long would you need?" "Hours, maybe less. But I would need access to a ship near the swarm, close enough to penetrate their communications network." Hyun reached for his communication device. "I will contact the general." Back in space, Taehyun received new orders from Earth. He read them twice, not quite believing what he was seeing. "They want us to do what?" Yoonji had received the same message. "Deploy a science team into the middle of the swarm to hack their communications." "It sounds like suicide." "It sounds like our only chance," Taehyun corrected. He thought for a moment, then made his decision. "Tell volunteers from the fleet that we need a small, fast ship for a special mission." Someone is going to have to fly into the heart of the swarm within minutes. He had more volunteers than he needed. He chose a pilot named Ji-won, who flew one of the fastest scout ships in the fleet. Ji-won was young, barely 25, but she had proven herself in the battle so far. "You understand this is a one-way trip?" Taehyun asked her over the comm. Ji-won's voice was calm. "Yes, sir. But if it saves Earth, it is worth it." Taehyun felt a lump in his throat. "The science team will transmit the necessary equipment and software to your ship. Install it, fly into the swarm, and activate the device. The rest is up to them." "Understood. Launching now." Taehyun watched as Ji-won's tiny ship accelerated away. Ji-won's hands were steady on the controls as her scout ship raced toward the void swarm. Behind her, strapped into the passenger compartment, sat 3 scientists who had volunteered to accompany her. One of them was So-min herself. She had refused to let anyone else carry out her plan. The ship was small, designed for speed and stealth rather than combat. It had minimal weapons and armor. Against the swarm, it was essentially defenseless. But it was also fast, faster than anything the bioships could catch if Ji-won flew perfectly. And Ji-won always flew perfectly. "Distance to swarm perimeter, 200 kilometers, she announced. "Beginning evasive maneuvers." The scout ship jinked and weaved, dodging between larger vessels in the human fleet. Ji-won had plotted a course that would take them through the most chaotic part of the battlefield, where human and swarm ships were actively engaged. The bioships would be distracted, less likely to notice one small craft among the chaos, she hoped. Behind her, So-min worked frantically on her equipment. The device they had built looked crude, cobbled together from spare parts and experimental technology. It was a transmitter capable of broadcasting on the same frequencies the swarm used to communicate. But instead of disrupting those signals, it would inject false commands. "The theory is sound," So-min had explained before they launched. "The swarm operates like a computer network. If we can hack into that network, we can make them receive false orders, make them attack each other, fly into obstacles, shut down completely." "And if it does not work?" Ji-won had asked. So-min had smiled grimly. "Then we die quickly instead of slowly. Better odds than most people have right now." Ji-won could not argue with that logic. They crossed into the battle zone. Explosions bloomed around them as human missiles found their targets. Bioships writhed and died, their bioluminescent glow fading as they were torn apart. Ji-won flew through the debris field, using the wreckage as cover. A tentacle lashed out from a nearby bioship, nearly catching their wing. Ji-won rolled the ship, barely avoiding it. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her hands remained steady. "Too close," one of the scientists muttered. Get used to it, Jiwan replied. We are about to get much closer. They passed through the human fleet's defensive line. Ahead lay the swarm itself, a living wall of alien ships that stretched as far as sensors could detect. Up close, they were even more horrifying than Jiwan had imagined. The bioships pulsed and writhed like organs in some massive creature. She could see eyes or things that looked like eyes watching from their hulls. Entering swarm perimeter now, she announced. Immediately, the bioships reacted. Dozens of them changed course, moving to intercept the scout ship. Jiwan pushed the engines to maximum, feeling the acceleration press her back into her seat. The scout ship was fast, but the swarm was everywhere. There was no clear path through. Jiwan had to improvise, flying through gaps that appeared and disappeared in seconds. Twice she came so close to bioships that she could see the texture of their organic hulls on her screens. Can you activate the device yet? She called back to Soman. Not yet. We need to be deeper inside, where the communications density is highest. Keep going. Jiwan gritted her teeth and kept flying. A bioship loomed directly ahead. No time to dodge. She fired the scout ship's single weapon, a small plasma cannon. The shot burned through the bioship's hull, creating a hole just large enough for her ship to fly through. They emerged on the other side, covered in alien fluids that obscured the viewports. Jiwan activated the wipers, a feature that had been added specifically for this possibility. The fluid cleared, revealing even more bioships ahead. How much deeper? Jiwan asked, hearing the strain in her own voice. Another minute. Just hold on. That minute felt like an hour. Jiwan dodged and weaved, fired when necessary, and pushed the ship beyond its design limits. Alarms blared as systems overheated. The hull groaned under the stress. But they kept going. Finally, Soman shouted, "Here! This is deep enough. Activate the device!" One of the other scientists flipped a switch. The transmitter powered up, filling the small ship with a high-pitched whine. On Soman's screen, data began streaming. The device was broadcasting, injecting false commands into the swarm's communication network. For a moment, nothing happened. The bioships continued their pursuit, tentacles reaching for the scout ship. Then everything changed. The bioship closest to them suddenly jerked to a stop. It turned, not toward the scout ship, but toward another bioship. It opened fire with biological weapons, acidic projectiles that burned through its neighbor's hull. The neighbor retaliated. Within seconds, a dozen bioships were fighting each other instead of pursuing the humans. "It is working," Soman cried. "Increase the broadcast strength." The confusion spread like a virus through the swarm. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began attacking each other. Some shut down completely, floating dead in space. Others flew erratically, colliding with their neighbors. But the swarm was vast. The chaos was spreading, but not fast enough. Billions of bioships remained unaffected, and they were adapting. Jiwan could see it happening. The ships further from the transmitter began isolating themselves from the compromised units, cutting off communication to prevent the false signals from reaching them. "They are adapting again," Jiwan warned. "We need to get deeper, broadcast to more of them before they can isolate the network." Soman shook her head. "The transmitter is already at maximum power. We cannot broadcast any stronger without burning it out." Jiwan made a decision. "Then we will just have to fly to different parts of the swarm, spread the chaos." She changed course, flying deeper into the mass of bioships. Behind them, the confused section of the swarm continued to tear itself apart. Ahead, millions more waited. Back with the human fleet, Captain Taehyun watched in amazement as a huge section of the swarm suddenly began destroying itself. He did not know what Ji-won and her team had done, but it was working. "All battle groups exploit the opening," he ordered. "Hit them while they are disorganized." The human fleet surged forward. Without the swarm's coordination, the bioships were vulnerable. Human weapons found their marks more easily. For the first time since the battle began, humanity was winning. But Taehyun could see that the confusion was not spreading fast enough. Large portions of the swarm remained organized and were continuing their advance toward Earth. If the chaos did not reach them, they would still overwhelm the defenders. On Earth, General Mina saw the same thing. She made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "Contact all available ships with the scout ship design," she ordered. "We need more transmitters in the swarm. Get me volunteers." Kiwan stared at her. "General, those ships will not make it back. You are asking people to die." "I know," Mina said quietly, "but if we do not stop the swarm here, everyone dies." Better to sacrifice hundreds now than billions later. The call went out across the human fleet and to Earth itself. Volunteers were needed for a one-way mission into the swarm. They would carry transmitters and spread chaos through the enemy ranks. They would not survive. The response was immediate. Hundreds of pilots volunteered, more than they had ships for. Within minutes, 20 scout ships launched from the fleet, each carrying a transmitter and a small crew. They raced into the swarm from different angles, broadcasting their false signals. More sections of the swarm descended into chaos. Bioships fought each other, shut down, or fled in random directions. The coordinated wall of death began to fragment, but it came at a terrible cost. Of the 20 ships, only 3 managed to reach their broadcast positions. The others were caught and destroyed by the swarm. Ji-won watched on her sensors as friendly signatures winked out one by one. She knew those pilots, had trained with some of them. "Keep broadcasting," she told Samin. "Do not let their sacrifice be for nothing." The scientist nodded, her face pale but determined. The battle raged for hours more. Human ships darted in and out of the fragmenting swarm, taking advantage of every opening. Engineer Do-yoon, commanding a group of supply ships that had been converted into weapons platforms, developed a new tactic on the fly. He positioned his ships to create overlapping EMP fields, forcing the bioships to fly through sustained electromagnetic interference. The tactic worked. Bioships that entered the fields lost coordination and became easy targets. Other commanders copied the approach, creating zones of denial that the swarm had to avoid or suffer heavy losses. Slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The swarm's numbers were dropping, not just from direct combat, but from the chaos spreading through their ranks. Entire sections of the swarm were now fighting themselves or had shut down completely. Ji-won's transmitter finally burned out after 6 hours of continuous operation. She had managed to fly to 3 different sections of the swarm, spreading chaos each time. Now her ship was damaged, leaking fuel and barely holding together. "Time to go home," she said to her passengers. But when she turned toward the human fleet, she saw bioships blocking her path. Dozens of them, organized and coordinated. These had not been affected by the transmitter. They had been hunting her ship specifically, waiting for her device to fail. Ji-won looked at her fuel gauge. Not enough to outrun them. She looked at her weapons. 1 shot left in the plasma cannon. She low. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days of continuous fighting, of ships exploding and people dying, of humanity throwing everything it had against an enemy that should have been unstoppable. But in the end, the void swarm broke. The chaos that Ji-won and the other volunteers had spread continued to grow. The swarm's collective intelligence fragmented into thousands of smaller groups, each acting independently. Without coordination, they were no longer an overwhelming force. They were just targets. Human ships hunted down the remaining bioships methodically. Some groups fled the solar system, scattering in different directions. Others fought to the last ship. But the organized assault on Earth was over. When the final bioship was destroyed, Captain Tae-hyun sat back in his command chair and realized he was shaking. They had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had survived. The cost had been staggering. 2/3 of the human fleet had been destroyed or severely damaged. Thousands of pilots and crew members had died. The defense platforms were gone, expended in the fighting. But Earth still stood. The void swarm had been stopped. Across the planet, people celebrated. They poured into the streets, laughing and crying and holding each other. Strangers embraced. Enemies forgot their differences. For one brief moment, all of humanity was united in relief and joy. In the war room, General Mina watched the celebrations with tired eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. Neither had most of her staff. They had won, yes, but she could not forget the faces of those who had volunteered for suicide missions. Could not forget the ships that had died buying time for others. "General," Ki-won said softly, "you should rest. The crisis is over." Mina shook her head. "Not yet. We need to start salvage operations, rescue any survivors from the damaged ships, and begin rebuilding the defenses. The swarm may return. The scientists say the swarm groups that fled are too disorganized to pose a threat anymore. They will probably dissolve completely or be picked off by other species. Probably is not good enough. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best." Ki-won nodded. He had learned not to argue with the general when she was in this mood. Over the next few weeks, Earth recovered slowly. The dead were mourned. Memorials were built. Jiwan and the other pilots who had flown into the swarm were hailed as heroes. Their names were written on monuments in every major city. Scientists like Hyun and Soman received recognition for their breakthrough technologies. Engineers like Do-hyun were honored for their innovative tactics. But they all insisted they had only done what needed to be done. "We fought for survival," Soman said in one interview. Any human would have done the same. Junho, the diplomat who had pleaded with the Galactic Council, watched the rebuilding efforts with mixed feelings. He was proud of what humanity had accomplished, but he was also bitter about the Council's refusal to help. That bitterness turned to anger when a message arrived from Council space. It came 4 weeks after the battle. A diplomatic vessel entered the solar system, broadcasting requests for permission to approach Earth. After some debate, General Mina granted approval. The ship landed at the main spaceport. From it emerged a delegation of aliens led by Voth himself, the council leader who had dismissed Earth's plea and called humanity barely sentient. Junho met them at the landing pad, flanked by security. He said nothing, just stared at Voth with cold eyes. Voth seemed uncomfortable, which was unusual for him. He was not used to being on the receiving end of hostility. "Ambassador Junho," Voth said carefully, "I have come to speak with your leaders. It is a matter of great importance." "I am sure it is," Junho replied. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Follow me." He led the alien delegation to the rebuilt war room where General Mina waited. Taehyun was there too, still wearing his military uniform. So were Hyun, Soman, and several other key figures in Earth's defense. Voth looked around the room, his black eyes taking in the tired but determined faces. He seemed to be searching for words. Finally, he spoke. "Humanity defeated the Void Swarm." "Yes," Mina said. "We did. Alone. Without Council assistance. Yes." Voth was silent for a moment. "The Council wishes to extend its congratulations. What you accomplished was remarkable. The Swarm has destroyed countless civilizations over the millennia. Many were more advanced than Earth, yet you survived. More than survived. You defeated them. Is that all you came to say?" Yunyo asked. "Congratulations?" Voth flinched at the tone. "No, I came to apologize. The Council was wrong to refuse your request for aid. We underestimated humanity. We made assumptions based on your technological level without considering other factors. It was a failure of judgment." "A failure of judgment," Junho repeated. "Is that what you call leaving 4 billion people to die?" "Ambassador, do not call me ambassador," Junho snapped. "You stripped away that title when you dismissed us. When you laughed at our plea for help. When you called us barely sentient." The room was silent except for Junho's angry breathing. Voth looked down at the floor. General Mina spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "Why are you really here, Voth?" "Not to apologize. The Council does not apologize. So what do you want?" Voth looked up at her. For the first time, there was something like respect in his eyes. "The fragments of the Void Swarm that escaped your solar system have entered Council space. They are attacking our outer colonies. We request your assistance in dealing with them." The irony was so thick that several people in the room laughed bitterly. Taehyun leaned forward. "Let me understand this correctly. You refused to help us when we faced extinction. Now you come here asking for our help?" "The situation is different," Voth tried to explain. "Those swarm fragments are disorganized now thanks to your tactics. But they are still dangerous. Your experience fighting them would be invaluable." "Our experience," Mina said slowly. "The experience we gained fighting alone. The tactics we developed because we had no choice. The weapons we created with our primitive technology. That experience?" "Yes," Mina stood up. She was much smaller than Voth, but somehow she seemed to tower over him. "You made a calculation when we came to you. You decided we were not worth saving, that our technology was worthless, our people insignificant. That calculation was based on your so-called superior wisdom and knowledge." She walked around the table, never breaking eye contact with Voth. "But your superior wisdom failed to predict one thing. It failed to account for human determination, for our willingness to try the impossible, for our refusal to simply accept death." She stopped directly in front of him. "You were right about one thing, though. We are primitive. We do not have your advanced technology or your ancient knowledge. All we have is ourselves, our courage, our creativity, our stubborn refusal to give up. And somehow that was enough." Voth said nothing. What could he say? Juno stepped forward. The council also said we had no strategic value, that we offered nothing worth trading for your help. I assume that assessment has changed? Earth has proven itself formidable, Voth admitted. The council would be honored to offer you full membership. No probationary period, full voting rights, access to council technology and resources. In exchange for helping you with the swarm fragments? Yes, the humans in the room exchanged glances. They had expected something like this, but hearing it stated so bluntly was still jarring. Hyun spoke up. What assurance do we have that the council will not abandon us again if another crisis arises? You have my personal guarantee, Voth said, and the council's official pledge. We have learned from our mistake. Have you? Salman asked. Or have you simply learned that underestimating humanity is dangerous? There is a difference. Voth had no answer for that. General Mina returned to her seat. We will consider your offer. But understand this. If we join the council, it will not be as junior partners or grateful recipients of your charity. We will join as equals. We will have a voice in all decisions. And we will not forget how we were treated when we needed help. I understand, Voth said. I hope you do, Mina replied. Because the next time a species comes to the council asking for help, Earth will remember. We will remember what it felt like to be dismissed and abandoned. And we will vote accordingly. She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. We will send our response within 1 week. Until then, you are welcome to stay on Earth as our guests. Perhaps you should take the time to tour our planet. See what a primitive world looks like. Talk to the people you are willing to let die. It might be educational. Voth and his delegation were escorted out. When they were gone, the room erupted in conversation. Do we actually help them? Taehyun asked Mina's side. Probably. The swarm fragments are still a threat, even if they are disorganized. If they grow strong enough, they might reorganize. Better to eliminate them now, but on our terms, Junho added. We help because it is the right thing to do, not because the council demands it. Exactly, Mina agreed. Over the next week, Earth debated the council's offer. There were arguments for and against joining. Some people wanted revenge, wanted to tell the council to solve their own problems. Others saw the practical benefits of membership and access to advanced technology. In the end, pragmatism won. Earth would join the council, but with conditions. They would maintain their own military. They would have full voting rights from day one, and they would insist on reforms to how the council evaluated requests for assistance.